right, everybody. This. All right, we'll try this again. This is the YA group panel that we are going to talk about supercharging your sales through branding. I'm the moderator, Jillian Dodd. I am a USA Today and Amazon top 10 bestselling author. I write mostly all young adult romance. I've been indie published completely for 10 and a half years, and I have about 46 titles out right now.
Hi, I'm Angie Stanton, and I write generally contemporary books. I have 10 books out. I'm a hybrid author, which means I've got 6 traditional and 4 indie. 2 of those traditional started as indie books. I have been translated into 4 languages, and I am the winner of a National Reader's Choice Award.
I'm Kyla Stone. I've been publishing since 2017. I have post-apocalyptic thriller books as well as a YA dystopian series and 2 YA contemporary novels and a YA historical Greek mythology book that does not sell. But it exists, it's there. I'm also a USA Today bestselling author.
Hi, my name is Kelsie Stelting. I write YA contemporary romance. I've been publishing since 2016, and I have 26 books out now. My most popular series is the Curvy Girl Club, which has 9, almost 10 books in it now.
All right, our first question is, what is branding, and what is you guys' brand?
I can start down here. Okay, so for me, branding is basically what your readers can expect from you, and you signal that in a lot of different ways, through your covers, through your ad copy, your book descriptions, how you interact online, and really, most importantly, the content of your book. My brand is mainly body positive, lighthearted, sweet, kind. I just really want people to feel like they're meeting their best friend who lifts them up when they come across my books.
I mean, I don't know if I have a ton to add to that great answer. Branding is, from your blurbs to your covers to your look inside to your swag, to your website, where the font of your name or the style of the books, at a glance, readers can recognize, oh, that's that book, that's that author, and I know when I pick up that book, I know what I'm going to get. The same thing, like your books are always positive, or if it's an emphasis on characters, or some of the rating and content, or what kind of romance they're going to get, they know because you have branded everything.
And just a quick add-on to that is, to me, branding means they can recognize you when they see you. And so in whatever way you do that, there's big and small. The whole goal of branding is so that readers will recognize you moving forward.
Yeah, and specifically recognizing your books. A lot of authors, I think, start out and they're like, I need an author logo. And for me, that's not your brand. Your brand is your books, the content in them, the way they look and feel, and how your series are branded as well. Next question. If you're on a limited budget, where would you start with branding?
Cover. I mean, that's what I did when we first started. I was putting covers on credit cards, but I still paid for, like, my first cover was like $500. There were covers available like $100, $150, but like, your book is what people see first. It's what they're going to be attracted to. Like, it has got to be to target on market and the best you can possibly afford.
I definitely agree with that. I started out with the homemade covers, and I definitely saw my income spike when I used professionals who knew way more about what they were doing. But I would also say, like, there are a lot of ways that you can brand after that, because once you get people into your series, then your brand is how you interact with them and their experience. And so you can invest a lot of time and effort into like interacting with your readers and creating a plan. So for me, my background is in communications, and I created like a brand and style guide for my books. And so I wrote down what colors I would use in my graphics, and I wrote down the RGB and hex colors so I could easily find them on Canva. I wrote down a list of questions I would ask myself before I posted things on Facebook. So I'd be like, is it kind? Is it positive? Does it point people toward my books? And then I also wrote down where I wanted my name to be on my cover, what font it would be in. So those are really like low cost things that you can do to set yourself up for success down the road.
How did you decide on a brand, and when in your career do you feel like you decided?
Okay, I'm going to start with I'm the person who didn't do it right, and I'm still playing catch up now. And so they've got some great stuff to say about that. But I do have, the other problem is with traditionally published books or with standalone books, it can be trickier to brand. And because every publisher, and with 3 different publishers, they have their own styles and they don't all coordinate. So, but they are doing it right.
Yeah, I would say from the beginning was making an emphasis. I mean, some things kind of evolve as you go and as you learn more. But yeah, I definitely tried to get branded covers from the beginning.
Yeah, I didn't start out that way at all. The important thing to remember, I think, is that regardless of whether you're doing it intentionally or not, you're creating a brand and you're creating reader expectations. So at the beginning, my brand was confusing. People didn't know for sure what they were getting. They weren't sure what quality they would get or what the characters would look like and act like. And so I think the question is more about, like, are you doing it intentionally? And I would say I started more intentionally probably after my first 20Books conference. So I think you guys are an awesome place to learn.
I also think that when you do branding, gosh, there's just has to be a synergy between your title. Your title needs to make sense for your genre. Your series title, your blurb, and your cover all need to send the same message. Like I saw in a group, you know how that people post their covers, and it was like this really bright yellow, happy cover. And then I read the blurb, and it was like this dark, like suicide story. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, you may bring them in with ads for your book, but if you're not giving them what they think they're getting, they're going to click away. And so branding is probably, I believe, the number one thing you can do. Okay, and the other thing, this was a question in the group, and they wanted to know, how does your brand help you compete with like steamy authors? You know, if there's, there's a lot of YA steamy stuff. So why don't you, or even people in other genres?
I write like clean and sweet, and so I think like there's definitely a market for that. You just have to think like there's a reader out there who wants your book, and you have to signal to them on how to find it. I don't think that my competition is steamy authors. I think my competition is like Netflix and Facebook. So I think just like being really clear about that is what's important in the sweet and clean market, because people really want to know what they're getting into.
I say at the bottom of the blurb that this book is PG-13 and does not contain sex or graphic violence or whatever. I know not everybody does that, but especially since I have a lot of books in the post-apocalyptic genre, and strangely enough, a lot of them don't like a lot of harsh language. They don't want sex in their books. So just saying that right up front, they know what they're getting.
Yeah, and just to add to that, hopefully by the branding you're doing, they can tell what type of book they're getting if you're doing it correctly.
How do you keep your brand consistent if you write multiple genres or tropes?
I think Kelsie talked about that earlier in having like her author name in the same spot on her on her book covers everywhere and similar fonts and all of that.
Yeah, I would say the same, that the author name is the same. And also, like, I use the same cover designer, so he has the same style. So even if it's a different type of book, the same, like, color use and artistic graphics and stuff is similar enough that it's recognizable.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think, like, the question is if you're using different tropes or if you're writing in a different genre. I think there are room for lots of tropes when you're writing within the same niche. I would just think about what your brand really is and narrow down on it. Maybe it's harder to write just one lane. Like, I write YA curvy girl romance, and I try to stick to that even if I'm writing billionaires or cowboys or whatever it is. And then maybe a new pen name if you're trying to write something too far different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it's not like an adjacent genre or sister genre where it's just a little half step over, then I agree, a pen name.
And so for me, I have a spy series. I have a lot of kind of gossip girly kind of stuff. I do it through color a lot. So like most of my covers have pink or gold or really pretty pastel colors. And so I think when you see it, even though it's different, it still looks like my book. And that's important to me. And then we're going to talk about like where else do you use your brand besides the sales page? And how do you reach readers that way?
Well, ideally, you will use that brand in your newsletters with the same colors, with the same title fonts, and draw that into your ads, draw that into your social media posts. And again, I think the easiest way to do that is with your colors, but also with your tone. So if you're a humorous writer and you're quirky and fun and you just carry that through.
I love this stuff because when I was learning about social media, they talked about like why people share things, and they say it's a reflection of your identity. And so like you want to think about like, do people want to identify with your brand? And so it's harder for like toilet paper companies because you don't want to identify with using toilet paper, I guess. But with books, there's so many cool things. Like if you write fantasy, like do you want to identify with being a really creative and whimsical person, or do you want to identify with being like intense and thoughtful and calculating? I think just how people relate with you as an author in your books is a really great way to use that.
And I also use it like if you go to my website, my online store, any of my social media, my newsletter, they all look exactly the same. I use the same picture for all of them, just because it's easy recognizable as my page, so they know they're at the right place. How important do you think branding has been to your career? For me, it's been everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything.
Do you want to expound further?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, what Jillian said. No, but yeah, I think branding is very important because when a reader is just scrolling through top 100 lists or Facebook ads or whatever, and they see we are drawn to the familiar and recognizable. I think they've said in like advertising that consumers need to see something 7 times before they purchase. And each time it's more familiarity, more recognizable, more interest. And so branding helps them to see like in a heartbeat, like, oh, that I know her, I know this book, I know what I'm getting, and then they one click.
Okay. And I think we're going to open it up to questions now because we figure there's going to be a lot of them.
Well, if nobody else is going to ask a question. So I write a 5-book YA, maybe possibly middle grade series called The Catmage Chronicles, and my cover designer initially made me a badge, a long stripe with a fancy oval thing that says The Catmage Chronicles in it. And what I've been doing is using that badge to distinguish my newsletter, my advertising, and when I'm writing a prequel and short stories, reader magnets, and I have the Catmage Chronicles badge across all of them, which is what I think you are all suggesting we do.
Yes and no. When it's your first series, that's fantastic. But when you start to write another one, you're probably not going to want to use that badge.
No, I'm not going to have all cat mages. You're
Right.
correct. So now what do I do? Because
So-
I'm not well known yet, and I can
so-
change my covers.
Well, you don't have to change your covers. You can just, maybe you have if a logo like that is your brand, kind of, maybe you create a different one for each series, right?
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, or maybe there's even like a piece of that badge that you can include across all of your author things. Like if there's a flame in it, then you carry the flame across. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily your series logo.
Thank you.
Hi there. So, for those of us who write both YA, sci-fi, and fantasy, would you say it's a good idea to keep the brand together because they're close enough together, or would you say that it's better to split the two and maybe get a pen name? They're both YA. Yeah, thanks.
To me, having a pen name would be a whole lot of work. So if it's the same genre and the same, and you know, it's still YA, it's the same similar heat levels, obviously. I would not have a pen name personally, but that may be because I'm a little more lazy. I just think it would be so hard to have two social. I don't know how people do it, and quite frankly.
Yeah, and I would agree, since YA is your primary genre, right? These two are both the umbrella underneath it. I would keep it the same name. And like Jillian said, like a pen name is a lot. You're doubling all your marketing, all your social media, all of that. So unless there is a strong reason to separate them, then I wouldn't.
Okay, great, thank you.
Do you guys suggest a tagline?
Like for your author, like
Yeah, for the author, yeah.
I think it can be really good, like in advertising and things like that, depending on how you're advertising. Like for me, I have a Curvy Girl series, and so I always try to include like body positive romance in my ad copy so they know what to expect, and so they associate my name and my books with that.
Because I'm dealing with all different styles of cover, and I don't have branding across my covers, which I'm hopefully going to be fixing all of that slowly over time. I'm working at coming up with a tagline like that I can have on my headers and my social media that basically says the kind of stories that I tell. You know, underdogs who, you know, female characters who find their power, you know, but more eloquently said.
I don't have a tagline. I think I try to just always give the reader the same thing every time, which is a big, fat, happy ending and lots of cliffhangers to get there. So that's pretty much what you get from me. And I also think, you know, if you've got letters, for me, that's what goes under my name on anything, because I feel like that's got a little more social proof than saying I write big, fat, happy endings kind of thing.
I kind of like that as a tagline, though. So, can we talk about marketing for a little bit? Because I know for indie, for my books anyway, the YA books tend to be read by adults, because that's who has credit cards and can do the ebooks. Have you guys found that to be true? And if so, how do you address your marketing for that?
I spend a lot of money on Facebook. Yes, so most of my readers are older, like I would say 35 plus. And in my Facebook advertisements, I'll find that most of my clicks come from people in the older age range. So I would pay attention when you're advertising, which age group you're advertising to, who's clicking and converting, with like the cheapest and most expensive clicks. Sometimes I find that older people will get click happy, but not buy the books. So I would just pay attention to that. And then I think for me, writing contemporary, the niche that I'm in has been so important because there are women everywhere who can identify with being a younger, curvier, fuller-figured teen, and they will read my books for that aspect because they're looking for that representation. And so I think like the angle that you're coming from is so important. Or like say you're writing cowboy books, maybe you advertise from that angle, because we were all teens one day, and sometimes it's fun to just go back and be a teenager again for a little while.
I had a book release in April, and I started Facebook ads for the first time, and I was targeting, teens, young adults, people up to like 35, 40, and it wasn't working. And I expanded it, and I found out, and now for the last several months, my highest rate of reader is 65 and older, and I was floored. And so I think this is why it's really important when they tell us to test and test and test with Facebook ads or whatever advertising you're doing, because I had no idea. It's like I thought I wrote a YA book, and it turns out it's more of a women's fiction in a way. So you never know, you might think it's one thing and it might be something a little bit different.
I do a lot of advertising. I want you to see people say they see my book recommended to them everywhere. That's because I'm paying for you to see that. I do a lot of Facebook ads. My biggest target is 18 to 34, with the 24 to 34 being the best. I do most of them on Instagram. They're a little higher cost per click, but people are shopping on Instagram. Big brands have stores on Instagram. So people are looking for that. I also do a lot of AMS ads. We do the AMG ads. I can't make a book club work for me to save my life, but I think that's because I'm at a pretty high price point. Most of my books are $9.99, and if they're over $70K, they're $9.99. If they're $50K, they're $7.99.
I find the same thing, that most of my audience is adults, and that's who I market to on Facebook and AMS ads. Of course, you're comparing other books, so advertising based on other YA books. But yeah, my age range is also 50 plus.
Jillian, can you just address, you gave us your price points. Are those books in Kindle Unlimited?
I was wide until 2 years ago in November, and I always did the large majority. Well, I was about 50-50 Amazon, Apple, and I always did really, really well there. We made the decision to start doing some heavy ads on Amazon and decided to try one series into KU. It did really, really well. My first book I ever wrote hit number 6 in the store, and it was one of the top 55 books on all of Amazon for the year of 2020. So don't forget about your backlist. I think that's a huge thing.
So they are in Kindle Unlimited?
Yes, right now they are in Kindle Unlimited. And we've been in for 2 years. We just hit 300 million page reads, which is insane.
I think also part of it is what your goals are, because if you're writing books to reach younger readers and to help younger readers, then there are ways to reach them. Maybe you speak at schools, at libraries, maybe you talk to mom groups or, Mother's Day Out, or you advertise more heavily on TikTok. For me, I really want to make money. And the time that I can spend creating a Facebook ad and testing it is so much less than I can trying to make those networking connections and going out and finding teens. And I don't really want to sacrifice my income for a traditional deal that might help me get in more bookstores where teens are shopping. So I think that's really goal-based too.
What about book lengths? I know, Jillian, you mentioned you had some at 50,000 and some at 70,000 words. Is there a sweet spot as far as you're finding, as far as length of number of words in your books?
So I write first person present tense, and I think those tend to be a little longer. I have one series that's shorter because it's a spy series, so she wasn't as thoughtful as most of my characters. Her like, oh my God, what's this boy gonna do? So I think it's whatever you like to write. I think it's pretty important to be consistent. Like that whole series is between 50 and 65,000 words, where my That Boy series is 90 to 120. So just, as long as it matches within the series, I feel like that's okay. And then adjust your price, I think, accordingly as well.
Yeah, I think that's a part of your strategy too. Like, if you're in KU, maybe you want to write longer books if the story calls for it, so that when you convert on an ad, you can make more money on your page reads. So there's a bit of strategy that goes into it as well. But also, like, your writing time and talents. And mine's changed over the years. I went from writing 50,000 word novels to 75, 80,000 word novels. So I think it just depends on your strategy.
Mine are also like between 70 and 90,000, so pretty consistent.
I think that's pretty normal for traditional indie as well, or I'm sorry, traditional YA as well. All right. Do you guys have any questions?
Any more suggestions for topics from the audience? If you don't have a question, something you want to hear more about from our authors? YA marketing ads?
YA marketing with, targeting top 100s in your like Amazon ads and stuff, and we're trying to find it, and you're getting books that are YA in there. Like, how do you find?
The question is, how do we find which books to target when we're doing, say, Amazon ads?
I mean, there's a lot of paid tools like Publishers Rocket. We use Helium 10 or something like that. And we can go with that. It's a Chrome thing, and you can see keywords that other people are using, and that's a great place to start, especially if it's somebody who writes something just like you. And then we do a lot of just searching Amazon, looking at the top 100 list, writing them down. And then when you go to the AMS ads, it auto-populates. If you put somebody's name in, it'll pull up, all of their keywords and their books and things, so you can just add them all pretty easily. We don't do a lot of the ASIN ones because that is really time-consuming, but the other kind are a little bit easier.
I feel like I want to put Jillian on the spot because she's doing so amazing.
Ask.
I want to hear about your reader engagement and how you keep readers connected to you across series.
Gosh, we kind of have two sides. So you build up a business and you try to figure out how to continue to just write, because all this stuff doesn't matter if you're not writing. And so my daughter works with me, and so does my son. And we've recently split the company kind of into two halves. The first half is gaining new readers. So anything that has to do with advertising to new readers, all of our ads, reaching out to new influencers is on this side of the business. And as soon as we get a new reader, they go into this funnel, which is the readers that we want to keep. So we do that. We have a Facebook group. We're pretty active on Instagram. We do newsletters. We do a party every month in our Facebook group to keep engagement high. What else do we do? Our store. What's the party? The party? Well, for if it's a release month, it's the release party. We just played around for the first time with a spoiler party on Zoom. So we only had about 30 people do it, but they had a ball. They got to talk to each other. I wasn't even on it. I was traveling here, and they had a great time. We've done contests in the group. Like my Keaton series was really long, and we would do contests where they would team up with a character and create like super cool graphics and or videos, stuff that I could use on social media to share. and they would be teams, and they all became friends. We do a Chaos in Cocoa Beach every year. We haven't with COVID, where readers come, so it's just my own reader thing. We started out with like 50 people, and it's kind of grown from there. I don't know. I was a very slow build. I sold 36 copies in the first 3 months of That Boy, which is the one that hit big recently. So it's a lot of building. And for me, going into KU was a major difference. I had a huge backlist, long books, and that helped a lot.
So what do you think, like, for authors who are looking to level up from making, like, say 5 figures or 6 figures, what do you think they can do to help level up into the higher 6-figure, 7-figure type years?
For me, it was ads and consistent releasing, keep building. We do really, really long pre-orders, usually a year. We released a book in October. The next one comes out in April, but the June release that we had, it came out like June 8th. The next one is June 7th to hit that one, next year to hit that 1 year. You can always move them up. In fact, we're going to do a secret, my Keaton series is a popular series for me, and I'm doing a spin-off of that. And so we're doing a Christmas story that's going to kind of space between when it ended and when the new one starts, because it's the next generation. And so we are going to do a year pre-order with no cover, just the words of the series title, because we want to capture readers. The other thing I think is really important is back matter. Like you should look at back matter of authors who are selling really well and see what they do. We treat it almost like a newsletter funnel where, when they finish this book, literally that doesn't even say the end, it says get the next book. And if you don't want the next book, here's a preview of it so you can read it, and then it's get the next book.
So I'm curious, if doing such a long pre-order, are you doing just like one release a year then, or is it multiple books that are on a long pre-order cycle?
If I had 3 books releasing, I would have all 3 up.
Okay, yeah.
As many as I can, regardless of what series it is.
Okay, so you have like multiple series going?
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay,
We
cool.
have 2 right now.
Awesome, yeah.
You guys do pre-orders?
I do pre-orders on all of my books. I feel like, so I grew up on a farm, so I'm always thinking about farming analogies. And one is like when you're harvesting wheat, you don't want wheat falling out of the bucket because every pound matters, right? And so if you have readers who have just read your book and they really love it, you don't want that wheat to fall out of your bucket. You want them to pick up the next book while they're like ready to fall in. And that's a service for them too, because when they see that book in their Kindle, they're so excited to get it on release day. So I think it's just good feelings, and don't lose your wheat.
Yeah, I always do pre-orders too. And with my last series, I had the first 5 covers up and for pre-order when I released book 1, so that people knew the other books were coming and when. I don't know if 5 books is but 3, like having the first 3 up is a good idea.
That's incredible.
So I'd like to ask one question. So you talked about pre-orders. Do you also put the first chapter of the next book in the end of the book that's available to them?
I do.
And then,
Or I might abbreviate it a bit, but I try to snag them.
and then would you put the pre-order link behind that? Is that what you would do?
Yes, absolutely. And at the top.
Yeah, I would do the pre-order link like right after the end. And then you can say right under it, keep reading for a bonus chapter, and then do the pre-order link again at the end of the bonus chapter. There's no limit to how many links you can put in there to capture them right at the end, and then if you're doing a sample chapter, after the sample chapter.
I usually don't have it ready, so it goes in once the book. It goes in the last book as soon as the next book is done on my side, or at least edited. Well, I never do a half-edited one. They're always fully edited.
So I did something a little different since I write romance, and so each book is a new couple. but they're all like a group of friends. And so instead of doing a chapter after the book is over, I've done an epilogue from the next character's point of view, and it kind of hints at the next character's like story arc and gets them excited. And since mine really revolves around like friendship, the readers get excited to pick up the next person's story.
I have a question for you on that. Do you include it in the book, or are you making them sign up for your newsletter to get that blog?
So that one's included in the book, but I also do a bonus story, usually from the hero's point of view, as a bonus, like if you want to see him give her a special gift 3 months later, sign up for my newsletter, and readers adore that. And I write mostly from the girl's point of view, and so they're like, if they can see the guy thinking how beautiful the girl is and like really showing her affection, they adore it.
And this is something I did not do until recently, but it's shocking how many people have built newsletters that way. So
Yeah, I would say like I went from having like 1 in 20 or 30 people sign up when I offer like get a free story on my newsletter. When I did just like a 2,000 word short story or a 500 word short story, it went to 1 in 5. So it was like exponential growth.
and you put the link right at the end of the book. Yeah.
I say if you want to keep reading the series, get this, and if you want to get this special short story, get this, like right after the end.
We deliver them, I'm assuming you do, through BookFunnel.
Yeah, I use BookFunnel.
So if your wheat has fallen out of your basket, is it worth doing another book in that series? Like if it's been a while since... She says yes.
I think it's important for your promise to readers that you finish a series, especially if it's cliffhangers. If it's a series of standalones, or it was a standalone and you're making it more, I think series are golden, at least for me, in YA. So I don't.
Yeah, I did this the wrong way. So I had one book that just like completely took off. Everyone loved it. They asked me for a second book, and I like kind of was like, I don't know if I want to do that or not. Blah, blah. So a year later, I released a second book, but I lost so many readers that it's just like it's never gotten the same popularity as book one, and then book one didn't have the chance to grow extra with the extra stories. So I would just think long and hard about it. Like if it's a standalone, if I could go back, I'd probably just leave it a standalone and work on a new series like the right way from the start.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. If there's been a long time between like book 1 and 2 or book 2 and 3, like you lose the Amazon algorithm love, like you lose it all. I've seen my friends release a book in a series after a long time and have it not do nearly as well as the rest. And sometimes, you know, when we're thinking of a career, and we do have to think about money as well as art and the love of doing it, if it's not making you much money, it's probably better to just start fresh with a new series.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
I'm short. I'm Heather Costa. I'm an audiobook narrator. I was wondering, how do you specifically market your audiobook versions of the titles that you have, the series that you do?
This is something I really want to work on, trying to reach that actual audio market. We don't advertise to them right now. What I try to do is always have a simultaneous release, so that all of my advertising efforts for whatever book is out there is they get to choose hardcover, softcover, audio, and ebook all at the same time.
And to add to that, whenever I do my ads, I always include that it's available in audio and include the link in the ad itself.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what Angie and Jillian said, like some more ebooks. And then also it's kind of fun if you're wide with audio and your books are at libraries. I'll have people comment on my ads that like, oh, I don't have the money for this month. And I'll say, oh, well, if you have a library card, maybe you can get the audiobook for free. So I'm still making money on it, and maybe it's just another avenue for them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Talk about your YouTube.
Oh, YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I do that. So I did a YouTube experiment, and I put a couple of my book 1 audios up for free. And I've gotten several thousand views of those, and I think it's up to my audiobook sales. The plan was to get money for monetization, but YouTube has shut down other authors from doing that, which stinks, but I still think that free book one is a cool funnel to Audible or wherever else.
How about, do you guys, I have an online store. Do you guys do that? Do you offer swag and other stuff to your readers?
Yeah, I have an online store too. We're currently selling a Curvy Girl Christmas box. So I have 4 boxes left if you want to get them. But it's been super fun, and like it's a fun thing to share in our group too, because if someone gets it, they'll post like, "Oh, I have this hat," and they're just kind of like this cool social proof. I think it's not a moneymaker, and I hate going to the post office. But I think it's like a long-term strategy for me.
Yeah, we make money on our store, and we started out not though. I mean, it's something you build up to, but we started doing a swag pack for every book release, and it's a limited edition where they get like a shirt, the paperback, sticker, or something like that for $25, $30, depending on the shirt cost, and those have done really, really helped our releases because people are seeing that on other people's social media, and that's free advertising. And then we also send the same swag packs to our influencers. So, and then once it's over, whatever shirts we have left go on the store separately, but they can only get that great price for a short time. Oh, end. It says end.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.